One of heliocentrists' favorite proofs of their ball Earth theory is the ability for ships and planes to circumnavigate, to sail or fly at right angles to the North Pole, and eventually return to their original location. Since the North Pole and Antarctica are covered in ice and guarded no-fly zones, however, no ships or planes have ever been known to circumnavigate the Earth in north-south directions, only east-west, and herein lies the rub. East or west-bound circumnavigation can just as easily be performed on a flat plane as it can a globular sphere. Just as a compass can place its center point on a flat piece of paper, and trace a circle either way around the pole, so can a ship or plane circumnavigate a flat Earth. The only kind of circumnavigation which could not happen on a flat Earth is north-south bound, which is likely the very reason for the heavily enforced flight restrictions. Flight restrictions, originating from none other than the United Nations, the same United Nations which haughtily uses a flat Earth map as its official logo and flag. David Wardlaw Scott wrote, "Circular sailing no more proves the world to be a globe than an equilateral triangle. The sailing round the world would, of course, take very much longer, but, in principle, it is exactly the same as that of the yachtsman, circumnavigating the Isle of Wight. Let me give a simple illustration. A boy wants to sail his iron toy boat by a magnet, so he gets a basin, in the middle of which he places a soap dish, or anything else which he may think suitable to represent the Earth, and then fills the basin with water to display the sea. He puts in his boat and draws it by the magnet round his little world. But the boat never passes over the rim to sail under the basin, as if that were globular, instead of being simply circular. So is it in this world of ours. From the extreme south, we can sail from east to west or from west to east around it, but we cannot sail from north to south, or from south to north, for we cannot break through intervening lands, nor pass the impenetrable ramparts of ice and rocks, which enclose the great southern circumference." Dr. Samuel Robotham said, "A very good illustration of the circumnavigation of a plane will be seen by taking a round table, and fixing a pin in the center to represent the magnetic pole. To this central pin attach a string drawn out to any distance towards the edge of the table. This string may represent the meridian of Greenwich, extending due north and south. If now a pencil or other object is placed across, or at right angles to the string, at any distance, between the center and the circumference of the table, it will represent a vessel standing due east and west. Now, move the pencil and the string together in either direction, and it will be seen that, by keeping the vessel, or pencil, square to the string, it must of necessity describe a circle round the magnetic center, and return to the starting point in the opposite direction, to that in which it first sailed." The ball earther's logical argument is that only a globe can be circumnavigated, the Earth has been circumnavigated, and therefore the Earth is a globe. This is indeed a logical modus ponens statement, but the conclusion is rendered invalid, because the first premise, that only a globe can be circumnavigated, is categorically false. Another similarly logical, but unsound argument ball earthers make is that only on a globe would one gain or lose time, when sailing or flying east or west. Time is gained or lost when sailing and flying east or west, and therefore the Earth is a globe. Again, the logical conclusion is rendered invalid, and the argument unsound, because the first premise is incorrect. The same effect would be experienced on a stationary flat Earth, as it would on a spinning ball Earth. William Carpenter wrote, "The sun, as he travels round over the surface of the Earth, brings noon to all places on the successive meridians which he crosses. His journey being made in a westerly direction, places east of the sun's position, have had their noon, whilst places to the west of the sun's position, have still to get it. Therefore, if we travel easterly, we arrive at those parts of the Earth, where time is more advanced, the watch in our pocket has to be put on, or we may be said to gain time. If, on the other hand, we travel westerly, we arrive at places where it is still morning, the watch has to be put back, and it may be said that we lose time. But, if we travel easterly so as to cross the 180th meridian, there is a loss, there, of a day, which will neutralize the gain of a whole circumnavigation, and, if we travel westerly, and cross the same meridian, we experience the gain of a day, which will compensate for the loss, during a complete circumnavigation in that direction. The fact of losing or gaining time in sailing round the world, then, instead of being evidence of the Earth's rotundity, as it is imagined to be, is, in its practical exemplification, an everlasting proof that the Earth is not a globe. Another favorite proof of Ballerthers is, the appearance from an observer on shore of ships' hulls, being obfuscated by the water, and disappearing from view, when sailing away towards the horizon. Their claim is that ships' hulls disappear before their mastheads, because the ship is beginning its declination around the convex curvature of the ball earth.
If you actually go out to a lake, and there are boats on that lake, the farther away a boat is, the more the bottom of the boat will disappear, and you'll basically just see the mast of the boat. And that's because the boat is actually going over the horizon that's curved.
Once again, however, their hasty conclusion is drawn from a faulty premise, namely that only on a ball earth can this phenomenon occur. The fact of the matter is, that the law of perspective on plane surfaces dictates, and necessitates the exact same occurrence. For example, a girl wearing a dress walking away towards the horizon will appear to sink into the earth the farther away she walks. Her feet will disappear from view first, and the distance between the ground and the bottom of her dress will gradually diminish, until after about half a mile, it seems like her dress is touching the ground as she walks on invisible legs. The same happens with cars speeding away, the axles gradually get lower, and the wheels vanish until it appears as if the car is gliding along its body. Such is the case on plane surfaces, the lowest parts of objects receding from a given point of observation, necessarily disappear before the highest. This law of perspective meets us on every hand, and cannot be gainsaid. If, in a straight line, we look at a frozen lake from a certain distance, we shall observe people, who appear to be skating on their knees, but, if we approach sufficiently near, we shall see them performing graceful motions on their feet. Farther, if we look through a straight tunnel, we shall notice, that the roof and the roadway below converge to a point of light at the end. It is the same law which makes the hills sink, to the horizon, as the observer recedes, which explains how the ship's hull disappears in the offing. I would also remark, that when the sea is undisturbed by waves, the hull can be restored to sight by the aid of a good telescope, long after it has disappeared from the naked eye, thus proving, that the ship had not gone down behind the watery hill of a convex globe, but is still sailing on the level of a plain sea. Not only is the disappearance of ships' hulls explained by the law of perspective, it is proven undeniably true with the aid of a good telescope. If you watch a ship sailing away into the horizon with the naked eye until its hull has completely disappeared from view under the supposed curvature of the Earth, then look through a telescope, you will notice the entire ship quickly zooms back into view, hull and all, proving that the disappearance was caused by the law of perspective, and not by a wall of curved water. Ballerthers will often quip that if the Earth were flat, then we could see all over it. But this is of course ignorant and inaccurate. If you stand on the beach, a plain or prairie, you will find the horizon extends, about 3 to 6 miles around you, depending on the weather and your eyesight. The range of the human eye, our field of vision, is from 110 to 1 degree, and the smallest angle under which an object can still be seen is 1/60 of 1 degree, so that when an object is 3,000 times its own diameter away from an observer, it will cease to be visible. So for example, the farthest distance at which one can see a 1-inch diameter penny, is 3,000 inches, or 250 feet. Therefore, if a ship's hull is 10 feet above the water, it will disappear from the unaided eye at 3,000 times 10 feet, or 6 miles. This has nothing to do with the supposed convexity, or curvature of the Earth, and everything to do with the common law of perspective. In the mid-19th century, a Frenchman named Léon Foucault became famous for swinging pendulums, and claiming their consequent motions were proof of the Earth's diurnal rotation. Since then, Foucault pendulums have regularly been swinging at museums and exposition halls worldwide, purporting to provide everlasting perpetual proof of the heliocentric spinning ball Earth theory. The truth is, however, unbeknownst to most of the duped public, that Foucault's pendulum is a failed experiment, which proves nothing but how easy it is for pseudoscience to deceive the malleable masses. Lady Blunt wrote, "This pendulum, modern scientists tell us, affords a visible proof that we are living on a whirling globe, which, according to a work on science now before me, is spinning upon its so-called axis, at the rate of over 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, and, in addition to other motions, is rushing on an everlasting tour around the Sun, the diameter of which is said to be 813,000 miles, and its weight 354,936 times greater than the Earth, from which it is said to be about 93 million miles distant, at the rate of over 1,000 miles per minute. Now, to prove that the Earth really has these motions, a pendulum is suspended at the show, the showman sets motion, and bids the gaping world of thoughtless men and women to behold a proof that we are living on a whirling globe, which is rushing away through space." William Carpenter said, "Astronomers have made experiments with pendulums, which have been suspended from the interior of high buildings, and have exulted over the idea of being able to prove the rotation of the Earth on its axis, by the varying direction taken by the pendulum over a prepared table underneath, asserting that the table moved round under the pendulum, instead of the pendulum shifting and oscillating in different directions over the table. But, since it has been found that, as often as not, the pendulum went round the wrong way for the rotation theory, chagrin has taken the place of exultation, and we have a proof of the failure of astronomers in their efforts to substantiate their theory." To begin with, Foucault's pendulums do not uniformly swing in any one direction. Sometimes they rotate clockwise and sometimes counterclockwise, sometimes they fail to rotate, and sometimes they rotate far too much. Scientists who have repeated variations of the experiment have conceded time and again that it was difficult to avoid giving the pendulum some slight lateral bias at starting. The behavior of the pendulum actually depends on, 1. the initial force beginning its swing, and 2. the ball and socket joint used, which most readily facilitates circular motion over any other. The supposed rotation of the Earth is completely inconsequential, and irrelevant to the pendulum swing. If the alleged constant rotation of the Earth affected pendulums in any way, then there should be no need to manually start pendulums in motion. If the Earth's diurnal rotation caused the 360-degree uniform diurnal rotation of pendulums, then there should not exist a stationary pendulum anywhere on Earth. Also, in the mid-19th century, another Frenchman, named Gaspard Gustave Coriolis, performed several experiments, showing the effect of kinetic energy on rotating systems, which have ever since become mythologized as proof of the heliocentric theory. The Coriolis effect is often said to cause sinks and toilet bowls in the northern hemisphere to drain spinning in one direction, while in the southern hemisphere causing them to spin the opposite way, thus providing proof of the spinning ball Earth. Once again, however, just like Foucault's pendulum spinning either which way, sinks and toilets in the northern and southern hemispheres do not consistently spin in any one direction. Sinks and toilets in the very same household are often found to spin opposite directions, depending entirely upon the shape of the basin and the angle of the water's entry, not the supposed rotation of the Earth. Jennifer Horton said, while the premise makes sense, that the Earth's eastward spin would cause the water in a toilet bowl to spin as well, in reality, the force and speed at which the water enters and leaves the receptacle is much too great to be influenced by something as minuscule as a single, 360-degree turn over the span of a day. When all is said and done, the Coriolis effect plays no larger role in toilet flushes than it does in the revolution of CDs in your stereo. The things that really determine the direction in which water leaves your toilet or sink are the shape of the bowl, and the angle at which the liquid initially enters that bowl. The Coriolis effect is also said to affect bullet trajectories and weather patterns as well, supposedly causing most storms in the northern hemisphere to rotate counterclockwise, and most storms in the southern hemisphere to rotate clockwise, to cause bullets from long-range guns to tend towards the right of the target in the northern hemisphere, and to the left in the southern hemisphere. Again, however, the same problems remain. Not every bullet and not every storm consistently displays the behavior, and therefore cannot reasonably be used as proof of anything. What about the precision of the sight aperture, human error, and wind? What about Michelson-Morley Gale's proven motion of the ether's potential effect? Why does the Coriolis effect affect most storms but not all? If some storms rotate clockwise in the north, and counterclockwise in the south, how do those storms escape the Coriolis force? And if the entire Earth's spin is uniform, why should the two hemispheres be affected any differently? Coriolis's effect and Foucault's pendulum are both said to prove the Earth moves beneath our feet, but in reality, only prove how easy it can be for wolves in sheep's clothing to pull the wool over our eyes.